country.
And that's a freedom you enjoy in democracy. Opinions differ. They are like noses. Every man has a nose. They all look different. The truth of the matter is the Secretariat did a fantastic work. All the amendments were accepted on the floor. Resolutions were made. And we all, as delegates a year, the year had it. And the amendments were now incorporated to amend the 1999 Constitution to give a proposed constitution for 2014. I do not see anything wrong in what this conference have done. As a matter of fact, the conference had moved Nigeria further. The train already left the station and there's no stopping it.
But we never, at any time, reckoned with the fact that there would be a new constitution and that whether the amended constitution will be called a new constitution. It is not a new constitution. I think the correct name is Amendment to the 1999 Constitution, and we should leave it there. And let us leave the sleeping constitutions to lie.
To health matters now, a total of 198 Nigerians have now been traced to have made contact with Ebola virus victims, while 177 are in Lagos. 21 persons are in Enugu, the capital of Enugu State, southeast of Nigeria. The virus was said to have been taken to Enugu by one of the nurses who traveled there from Lagos, contrary to instructions. This was revealed at today's Federal Executive Council meeting, which was devoted to the efforts being made by the government to combat the disease. The Minister of Information, Mr. Labaran Maku, told journalists that a committee has been set up to handle the claims by some Nigerians that they have a cure for the ailment. He also urged Nigerians not to panic, as the government is in touch with the rest of the world on the possible cure for the disease.
Number includes, people so far that have made contact with the index case or secondary contacts. So 198 of them, 177 in Lagos, and 21 persons in Enugu are also being watched. And this is because one of the nurses that was involved in the treatment of the index case, unfortunately, disobeyed medical instructions and somehow traveled to Enugu. But we have no problem. All those who she has been in contact with, including her husband, are under quarantine. And so the medical team has been able to trace all those who made contact with her. So the point I want to make here is that apart from those people who were in contact with the index case, Mr. Sawyer, the late Mr. Sawyer, and the secondary contacts with those who handled this case, there has not been any known person in Nigeria that has the probability of contracting this virus.
The Minister of Information, Mr. Labaran Maku, was still talking about the Ebola virus, and unfortunately, another country has been classified in the list of high-risk countries for the spread of the deadly virus. According to the World Health Organization, Kenya is now vulnerable because it is a major transport hub with many flights from West Africa. This is by far the most serious warning to date by the WHO, which is saying that the virus could spread to East Africa. Health experts are battling to contain the outbreak in West Africa, where it has killed more than 1,000 people. Meanwhile, Canada says it will donate up to 1,000 doses of an experimental Ebola vaccine to help fight the outbreak.
The WHO's Assistant Director General confirmed that a wide range of potential treatment and vaccines are available, and several had proven to be effective in non-human primates. The West Africa Ebola virus epidemic has killed at least 1,013 of the more than 1,848 people it has affected in Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria. Hence, the WHO has declared it an international health emergency. The ethics panel met to discuss whether various experimental drugs and vaccines being developed for Ebola might be used in the outbreak, despite not having been fully tested or licensed. While the panel of experts unanimously agreed it was ethical, Kiana said there were some caveats. A specific treatment or vaccine would be a potent asset to counter the virus, the panel found. But Ebola outbreaks can be contained using available interventions like early detection and isolation, contact tracing and monitoring, and adherence to rigorous procedures of infection control. The WHO said it was likely that so-called first-in-man trials, the first test of drugs in humans, would be conducted over the next 2 to 4 months, but cautioned that even after that, and if the trials proved successful, supplies would be limited. The ethics meeting was called after experimental Ebola drug ZMapp, made by U.S. biotech company MAP Biopharmaceuticals, was given to 2 American health workers infected with Ebola in Liberia.
There are some potential therapies and vaccines which look promising, but which have not yet been tested, or if they have, not thoroughly, in clinical trials. Some of these, as you know, have already been used, or others are currently considered for compassionate use. Given the advice of the experts during yesterday's consultation, we will convene them in Geneva again, together with other experts, to advise WHO on how to set the ethical criteria to prioritize.
There are no licensed treatments or vaccines for Ebola. As well as MAP, several other biotech companies and research teams have been working on potential drugs. Meanwhile, with their cricking healthcare systems completely overrun, Sierra Leone and Liberia have both declared state of emergency to tackle the highly contagious and incurable disease, which has also stricken neighboring Guinea.
It's important to reach out to the communities and to engage them and to use all sorts of varieties of ways to do this. So, for example, in communities, there are many opinion leaders. They may be religious leaders, they may be local leaders, but they are people who really shape the understanding and perspectives of communities, and it's important to reach out to them so that people really understand that this is not a mysterious disease and what are the proper steps that can be done to protect themselves and others.
The WHO has called for the mobilization of political, religious, and local leaders in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea to create a better welcome for medical professionals attempting to treat victims.
Countries should ensure that the burials and the funeral rites are conducted in accordance with health regulations to reduce the risk of infection. They should be done with professional teams which help them to make sure that those things are done safely, but they should also be done in a way which is culturally sensitive.
The organization is also consulting with local leaders to help suspend local customs, such as eating bushmeat or hugging and kissing Ebola victims at their funerals, which can transmit the disease.
In other news, the former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak has told a court that he did not order the killing of protesters back in 2011. The 86-year-old spoke for the first time in court at a hearing in his retrial on charges of conspiracy to kill hundreds of demonstrators. He admitted that he had made mistakes, but he said he did his best to execute his duties as president. He was overthrown in a popular uprising back in February 2011 after nearly 30 years in office. In 2012, Mubarak was found guilty over the killings of protesters and sentenced to life imprisonment, along with former Interior Minister Habib al-Adli. The proceedings have been adjourned to the 27th of September, when a verdict in the case is expected. Now, unfortunately, there's been yet another recording of loss of life as regards the crisis in Gaza, when 6 people were killed in the Gaza Strip this morning. The incident occurred when an Israeli missile exploded amid attempts to dismantle it. The dead included 2 journalists and a number of bomb disposal officers, and occurred in the town of Beit Lahia in the north of the Gaza Strip. In the meantime, indirect talks aimed at finding a long-term solution to the Gaza conflict have been taking place in Cairo, and they involve negotiators from the two sides.
Two foreign journalists who were not immediately identified were among the dead. The explosion occurred in Beit Lahia, a town in the northern Gaza Strip that had been the scene of fierce fighting between Israeli forces and Palestinian militants. In a statement, the Gaza police force said it mourned the deaths of 3 of its men, identifying them as the head of a local bomb squad, his deputy, and another officer. It said an unexploded Israeli shell had detonated. A 3-day ceasefire, in effect since Monday, has given Palestinian bomb disposal experts an opportunity to search for unexploded munitions. Meanwhile, negotiations continue in Cairo. Demands are being made which include the Palestinian delegation which wants Israel to let Gaza fishermen sail up to the 12 nautical miles from the shore so that they can hook greater numbers of larger fish. This is because over the past 8 years, Israel has prevented Gaza fishermen from venturing out after 6 miles, sometimes restricting them to the 3 miles from the shore after tensions between the two sides escalated. The conflict destroyed large parts of the Gaza Strip, and the United Nations said 425,000 of 1.8 million population have been displaced. Some took shelter in UN-run schools. In Cairo, Hamas, which dominates Gaza, and its allies seek a lifting of Israeli and Egyptian blockade of the coastal enclave. Israel and Egypt harbor deep security concerns about the Islamist group, complicating any deal on easing border restrictions. Israeli and Palestinian negotiators were tight-lipped on Wednesday on whether any agreement on a long-term end to hostilities was near. A Palestinian embassy source said the talks were continuing and Palestinian delegates would hold more meetings with Egyptian mediators. The two sides are not meeting face-to-face because Israel regards Hamas, which has advocated its destruction, as a terrorist organization that cannot be a direct negotiating partner.
Now, despite the rising number of casualties of illegal migrants, more than 1,200 migrants have entered Spain illegally by sea over 2 days amid Spanish denials that Morocco failed to carry out patrols. The Interior Ministry says the wave of migrants is the result of increased defenses at the borders of 2 Spanish territories in North Africa. More sub-Saharan migrants are now trying to reach Spain by boat, but the cooperation between the two countries over migration remains quite good. As immigration centers in southern Spain struggle with the numbers, the government spokesman in Madrid denies reports in the Spanish media that the Moroccan authorities had failed to carry out patrols on Monday and yesterday. Since Monday, Spain's Coast Guard has rescued 126 small dingers and boats carrying a total of 1,229 migrants who were making the short but often perilous crossing from Morocco to Spain. Yesterday alone, 920 people made the crossing in 94 boats with 116 women and 26 children aboard. Thousands of sub-Saharan migrants live in makeshift camps in northern Morocco, and there have been 4 attempts by groups of migrants to scale the border fence at Melilla within the past 24 hours. Now, after failing to meet the August 10 deadline for the government and opposition to form a transitional government passed without results, the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has accused both camps of South Sudan of failing to commit to the peace process, and that a truce agreed in January also failed to bring peace as fighting resumed soon after it was signed. The CARE International Charity has warned that the failure to reach a deal means the South Sudan's severe man-made food crisis could reach catastrophic levels. Almost 4 million people are now suffering from a food crisis after months of fighting has prevented farmers from planting or harvesting crops. Humanitarian aid organizations have faced hurdles, one trying to deliver aid and assistance to those who need it, especially with the onset of the rainy season. Several aid workers have been killed this month, and many of them remain missing. Well, that's it on The World Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Cynthia Araya. Up next is Sports News.